Okay, in this video, let's see how we go about implementing an Ethernet card into this original 5160 IBM PC XT. I'm using an a 3COM Etherlink 3 card. It's an ISA card, so that's what we're going to go with. And let's see what we got. First thing is first. We have our external Gotek here that has our Ethernet files that I need to copy over. So we're going to leave that plugged in for the time being. I have a couple of open slots here. So first thing I'm going to do is plug this Ethernet card in here. There are no jumpers or anything on the Ethernet card. So I'm kind of hoping that it just it uses the drivers to recognize it. I didn't do a whole heck of a lot of research on this card. It just was just a real taken out of a bin. So okay, so it's firmly seated. Just put the screw back in. Okay, so now that that's in place, let's boot this thing up. Our trusty Gotek, and let's copy the Ethernet files over. Okay, we're going to go to the C drive, and then we'll make a directory called Ethernet. And then on the Gotek drive, here are my 3COM configuration files. Actually, these files have been made specifically to work, to be configured for the XT. So copy those files over. It'll be easier to just work off the hard drive. Okay, so the first thing we need is a packet driver in order for the LAN card to communicate. So these files that are here have been developed by a person named Nestor to work with the XT, because the Ethernet, the 3COM card needs a 286. So basically he had rewritten some of the code in order for it to work, you know, with the XT. So if we run the config file here, it's too big to fit memory. Wow. I think my memory error that I was getting earlier is coming into play now. I was hoping that we could get through the network card despite only having 128K of memory, but I guess we have to fix this memory error that's been on this since day one. That's what the 20,000 means. It's in bank 2 of the memory. Chances are I probably just have to replace the chips. Unfortunately, since we restore Commodore 64s, I have a heck of a lot of 4164 chips. I think what we're going to do is just go ahead and take out these memory chips out of bank 2. and test the chips. Fortunately, I restore a lot of Commodores, so I have a whole lot of memory chips. And I believe they're 4164s, so that's a good thing. So here's the AST card. Pull that out. The memory is right here, so I'll have to pull this board out. The CGA card. We needed to pull the AST board out anyways because I need to replace that battery that's in there. So there's the CGA card. Isn't that beautiful? You don't make things like this anymore, that's for sure. That's nice. Okay. So put that aside. So bank 2. I need to pull this little floppy thing out of here to get that out of the way, and that gives me bank 2. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 chips in bank 2, so not too bad. It's a lot less hassle taking out and testing these chips than on a Commodore, because on a Commodore they're soldered in. These are socketed. All right, let me start taking these out and testing them and be right back. Okay, well, now that I've basically troubleshot the memory chips in bank 2, I found the culprit of my memory problems, which is this little guy. So this chip was bad. So after replacing that chip, I think that we can move forward with our Ethernet project. And the nice thing is, since all the memory is intact now, you're going to see that not only am I got the 256K from the motherboard, but I also have the expansion memory showing up as well. So this is no longer a 256K computer, it's now a 640K computer. So there we go. No more errors, and now we can move forward. So we have to configure our LAN card, our Ethernet card that we have in there. So we're going to go back to the files that I copied over from the Gotek. And this file here is a 3COM configuration file that has been hacked for the 8088, because this file, the original file, only ran on a 286 or better computer. So some folks on the internet did some wonderful work in hacking this to work on an 8088. So now we can configure the card with the configuring software. Okay. So what we're going to do is, it found the card, which is wonderful. And we're going to leave the base address as it is. the XT, let me see if I can figure this out here. The XT does not have an interrupt 10, it only goes up to interrupt 7. So first and foremost, I have to find a way to, there we go. We're going to change the interrupt to 3. And we're going to leave the base address at 300. As far as the boot prom, that doesn't exist. The transceiver type, we have an RJ45. The network optimization, we want to be DOS. The modem speed, we don't have a modem on here, so I'm going to select no modem. And we don't want plug and play capability, so we'll disable that. And lastly, as far as the duplex is concerned, let's put it on, we'll just leave it as it is for now. We can always change it later. Okay. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run this 3C509, and then we need a base address. Ha! There we go. So I have my TCP stack going, I have the driver going, the port is configured, I have an Ethernet address, I just need to load a DHCP on here and it'll grab it. Well, first I need to put my my virtual wireless router attached to this, to the Ethernet port here, and that way I can grab an IP address from the network. But as you can see, everything is working. The LAN card, it found the LAN card. There's the packet drivers installed. It's IRQ3. It's an IO port 300 like we asked it to. The 10 base T transceiver. We got our IO or ID port, and we have an Ethernet address. So we are live with our Ethernet card. So very exciting. So what we're going to do now is basically get that wireless router hooked up to this thing, and that way we can hook up to our network, and I can try the FTP, and I can hit all of the old school, old time, old geezer boards out there that still exist. There are some BBSs that still exist for these retro computers. So anyways, we can cover this case back up now, and maybe save that chip for posterity. So stay tuned, and we'll see what's next, and hopefully wrap this up. Okay, so now we've got our external Gotek. I loaded some, and we got our Ethernet card going. I loaded some files, a bulk of files that come in a package called mTCP, and it has a DHCP program in there so you can get an IP address assigned. It has a FTP client, FTP server. There's a whole mirage of programs. It's a really cool package. So I put that on the Gotek drive. We're going to turn this puppy on. It's going to make a lot of noise. But let's copy those files over and see if we can get that Ethernet card communicating with our network. So I hooked it up to one of my physical switches on the network, but the game plan is, and I'll leave a link to this, is to put one of those wireless access points or wireless bridges on to this LAN card using the RJ45. That way it makes this machine wireless. And I'll put a link. It just hasn't gotten here from Amazon yet. I use it on a few of my systems here, but I'll leave a link on the Amazon page. So instead of physically wiring this to a switch, you would end up configuring this small unit to your wireless network. Your computer is now wireless. So let's see where we're at with this and show you how we get the network card on our network. Okay, that's loading up our Gotek. So let's go to the D drive, and that's our Gotek. And these are the files I want to copy over. I already created a directory earlier. Copy all these files over. So, two things out of this that I'm going to show you. These files run just as they're already compiled. There's just two things you need to create. You need to create a configuration file. I named it tcp.cfg. You have to set it in an environment variable, and I do that in another file called DHCP run. It's a batch file, so I'll show you those two. The main thing is you need the config, and you need to run DHCP first and foremost in order to get an IP address assigned to you. But if you read the manual that comes with these programs, you can also assign a static IP address in the config file. So the config file that the DHCP creates is already has IP info in it. That's what it'll use. So you don't necessarily have to get an IP address assigned to you every single time. You can make this static. It's in the documentation. You just have to configure the configuration file appropriately. So with all that stalling, this is the configuration file, and basically it just runs, it tells it the interrupt, the packet driver interrupt that we set earlier with our 3Com card. Note that this requires a line feed. You can't just have one line with no line feed. It'll error out if it does that. I had found that out earlier, and so that was kind of weird. So let's take a look at the batch file. So the batch file has a couple of things going on in it. First of all, it loads up the 3Com driver for the card. As you saw in the earlier video, that's how we got the card going. It sets the environment variable to that configuration file, that one-line configuration file. And note that there is no path in front of the tcp.cfg. If you put a path in front of it, it'll bail. It won't recognize the variable. So keep that in mind. And then it runs a DHCP program. It's going to do 3 retries and time after 20 trying to get an IP address. So let's go ahead and run this. Okay. So it's trying to get an IP assigned to it right now. There we go. we got an IP address. So that's our IP address, 171. So we are on my network right now. How do you like that? So now I can run an FTP server on a computer on my network, which I have, and copy files back and forth using the DHCP. It's a lot faster and a lot more convenient for me and efficient than using a Gotek drive and loading up that drive on and off. So this basically will eliminate the use of my Gotek drive by using my FTP server. So let's go through this together, because I haven't gotten this far yet. I'm going through this with you. All I did was just the initial setup. So we're both finding things out here as we go along together. So ftp.exe, we run that. Okay, so the FTP server name, you know, that would have been obvious, but wanted to see if it would produce this help screen. So this is my internal FTP server. All right, so I'm logged into my FTP server. Well, not logged in, but I'm attached to it. So what's the username here? I haven't used this for a long time. There you go. So there you have it. So I'm logged in, so I can use mget and to get files and to bring files in. So I can copy files back and forth now using my FTP server. Let me load some IBM files on there, so you know, we can see about you know, how this actually works. Okay, so I loaded some files on the FTP server. So let's, and it had already timed out by the time I did that. So that's why you're seeing a blank screen. So let's go back to that. Get back onto the FTP, attach ourselves back to the FTP server here. Okay, so we did a directory last time, so you can see there's more files. Let's just do the names. So there's a directory called IBM files, and then there's some files on the root that I'm logged into. So we can remember, this has to follow DOS convention, so the case is sensitive. So we're in the IBM files directory, and you see there's a lot of other, you know, files and directories in here as well. So this is, you know, this is the FTP site. So now, you know, to get a game or to get a file off of here, let's go find a game here. Hopefully this isn't too big. So let me bring down Robotron.exe. So I just use the get, and you know, you can read up on it. So I can change the name of the file with the get, the location, and all that stuff. But I'm just going to go ahead and transfer. So it's transferring the file. So boom, it's done. So now if I go back to my local drive, I should be able to see it once I quit here. I can also put a file, you know, they're using the put command. So it's the same thing. It's just you got to remember with DOS, you're following the DOS conventions here. So case sensitivity and all that stuff. It's not that much different than Linux. So if we quit here, there's the Robotron file. that we just downloaded. So that is how I'm going to be pushing files in and out of my IBM XT from now on. Don't need a Gotek drive, don't need disk drives, don't need anything. Just connect to the FTP server and you're all set. And right now, like I said, I have it wired into my switch, but I will send you the Amazon link for the wireless. It acts as a router, as a bridge, all sorts of things, but the bottom line, for this wireless device that you can plug into the RJ45 port, instead of hardwiring it, and it'll make your computer wireless. So all I can say is boom, there you go. All right, I hope I gave you some motivation. You know, lots of ways to skin this cat. So I mean, it's just the way I did it. Different ways to flash your Gotek device, different ways to manipulate the files, different ways to get files in and out. This is just how I plan to do it. It was fun picking up this machine from Goodwill of all places. The only thing that was wrong with it, like I say, is the battery needed to replace on the AST card. I'm still waiting for that, and the one memory chip that was bad. Unfortunately, I have a gazillion of those chips since I restore a lot of Commodores, and it's the same memory chip the Commodore 64 uses. So this worked out rather well. Hope it inspired. You know, leave comments if you like, and I'm happy to help any way I can. I'll leave as much information in the description with links to everything as I possibly can, but if I forget something, you just let me know and I'll have it out there right away. So enjoy life, you only live once.